Well, good evening. I'm Deb Ryan. I'm from the Westies Neighborhood group. And we're starting a little late, 6:22. And I'm glad for our neighbors that have come to the meeting, and we've made it before the snow. So thank you for coming. For our agenda, which is on the one side of the flyer, we talked about the monthly police reporting and recent drug busts. We've had a change in neighborhood officers in the last month or so. So we do have other new officers that are not used to coming, and I guess they're delayed or they're busy with all the extra work that's been involved in the rainbow laundry and the flower shop fire that's nearby us. Normally we do have a monthly police report where they tell us about the police activity in our area of the neighborhood, which is from 1st through 14th Avenue and from Stewart to Bridge Street. Most of the time, they're finding that it's mainly traffic issues, that because we have Stewart Avenue, 3rd Avenue, Bridge Street, and somewhat on 1st, that we do have a lot of traffic violations that may be happening in our area, but not necessarily as serious crime. But I guess that we've learned with the fire that happened yesterday at the laundromat that it appears it is arson, and I guess we'll be learning more about that in the days to come. I happened to call this afternoon Emmerich and Associates that owns the property of the laundromat, and they had no decisions yet on what's going to be happening. And it's still pretty early on at this point. So I don't know, has any of our neighbors learned anything in addition to what from what I understand from a few other people tonight, that the arson could have been started by a homeless person that was wanting to sleep in the laundry, and that has happened occasionally. I have heard about some other homeless people sleeping in other areas and potentially other laundromats as well. But I guess we'll find out more in the days to come. So, I guess for now, instead of going to our guest speaker about the Mountain Lane proposed housing, since the developer is not here yet, is there any type of resident questions or concerns that I could help you or address if you have some questions at this point? Okay. Yes?
Do we know how tall those buildings are going to be?
Pardon me?
Do we know how tall those buildings are going to be, the apartments?
Are they going to be 2 stories?
From what I understand, I think it's going to be 2 stories, but from what they were proposing at the economic development meeting, I do think the garage is really going to be at ground level, and then with concrete or stone, so the actual I guess apartments will start at the 2nd floor level.
Yeah.
There won't be anything at the 1st floor level. And I believe there's supposed to be 64 units. So I'm not sure, but on the back, I mean, they did put the different elevations showing on the back. And it does appear that it looks like it's just going to be the 2 stories, but I don't know, maybe if there's additional interest, like there has been in the River Life, that they've talked about developing and potentially, putting an additional floor or 2 down on the east side of the river. So It's something we were just hoping to hear for the first time and was just discussed at the Economic Development meeting last Tuesday, where I attended that meeting. And then that was approved by the committee with one objection from Gary Gisselman because it's not affordable housing. Hi there. And then it will be going on to the Planning Commission. Now, my general idea of the Planning Commission, they look at the details of the actual plan, look at the parking, see if the parking is adequate, make the determination of how it should look, or signage, or how much it's away from the actual, what do you call it, offset by the dimensions of the property. Some of them are required to be offset by 20 feet. Sometimes there's an exception that they can be within 5 feet of the lot lines. And then it's not showing here, but from my understanding from what was presented on last Tuesday, there's plans for a medical clinic on the lower level, right behind, I think, the Cricket, that lot that's closest to 17th Avenue, a medical clinic. Now, I did bring up, were there any commitments yet for that medical clinic? That it seems that we do have just about medical clinics and quick trips just about everywhere. And is it something that's really needed, or there is a commitment to have something in there? Because it's been about, I think, 3 years for the store where they had planned space for a Subway or a Cousin Subs, and that never materialized. So it's been, that one section has been vacant for over 3 years. So any other questions about neighborhood issues or?
Is the city going to financing the buildings in any way?
They have requested some TIF funding, tax increment funding, I believe. Well, I guess I'm not exactly sure how much, but they're talking about a 9-year payoff. And I guess it all depends on what's involved, and I don't know if they feel that some of that they need help with raising the old building or some other type of improvements or not. But not every business gets tax increment funding, and I think they need to justify that. And that's part of why we offer and encourage neighborhoods to talk to the developers and learn more about the projects as such. So if you don't mind, I'm hoping they're just getting delayed and that we get more answers shortly, but at this point, officer, do you want to give the neighborhood input? Especially, you probably have something about the fire and that.
Yeah.
It just happens we're taping because I thought this was going to be an important meeting. So we do have like audio here, so we want to make sure that you can be heard. So do you mind standing up?
Yeah, I can
so
stand up. If anyone has any issues,
this,
you can let me know.
and then
do you want me talking into that?
yeah, if you don't mind. This way we can
Actually, if you'll leave it on the table, you could just stand behind the table, that would be fine.
And it'll pick up
Is
on
that
it?
all right?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
that way we can put it on public access.
Yeah, so my name is Officer Thuman. I work for the Wausau Police Department. My first time here at the Westies meeting, I moved to the west side about 4 months ago now. So I'm generally in this area patrolling, and I work night shift from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I don't have a whole lot to report for you guys. Don't have any paperwork to pass out today, but hopefully next meeting, now that I'm coming more regularly, I can bring things on a regular basis. But as far as an update for Rainbow Laundry, obviously you guys can tell there was a fire there. So we do have someone in custody for that. They were taken into custody shortly after the incident occurred. Occurred at about 3:30 in the morning last night, or yesterday. So So we had officers, including myself, kind of positioned on perimeter throughout the entire day and then all through the night as well, kind of just maintaining the scene. While they did their investigation, the fire department kind of took over a lot of that with the Department of Criminal Investigation. So DCI came in and did some investigation as well and took photos. And at this point, it's just kind of police tape is kind of put around it. There's not a whole lot happening with the scene at the moment, but we are just maintaining the scene, making sure that there's extra patrol throughout the night. So that's what we're going to kind of be doing. We're not going to have anyone positioned necessarily, but we're going to have it kind of taped off and keep a close eye on it throughout the night so that no one else is getting into the scene or tampering with it. So if you have any questions, I can answer what I know. Otherwise, I can get back to you guys with any questions.
At this point, they're probably wanting just to raise the whole thing so that it's not a safety issue.
Yeah, I guess my assumption would be the plan would be to start clearing things away. I know they initially knocked down the building because of the safety risk, but that type of building, I guess the roof was tar. It was a 2-layer roof, one metal, one tar, so it was very difficult with the roof caving in. There was a lot of spots. I mean, obviously there's a lot of different electrical things in there, so fires were continuing to start throughout that day yesterday. It's my understanding that there's still a couple hot spots on scene, so that's also why we're kind of keeping an eye on it really closely, and that's why it's taped off. There could potentially be some restart of a fire. I mean, hopefully the snow and rain kind of keep it away, but we're going to keep an eye on it, and that's kind of why we're letting it sit right now. Once it is clear by the fire department, I'm assuming there's going to be some sort of cleanup process with them and the city, and I'm not sure what the owner wants to do at this point. I haven't directly asked him that question. I think he was kind of flustered with everything going on, so no one really asked him what's your plan next. So,
Yeah.
But I would assume some sort of cleanup after it's cleared. Any other questions or anything in the neighborhoods to pass along?
Well, I just noticed that there was a lot of traffic of people, but it just didn't seem like there was there any accidents at all caused by all the people trying to get by and?
No, it's just kind of, traffic was difficult. I mean, obviously, if you mess with someone's everyday routine going to work, and that's the same road they've taken for the last 3 years, there's going to be some confusion, and we made sure to get in contact with the news stations and get the word out there as soon as possible so that we can reroute through the day. We haven't had any accidents that I'm aware of, and there were no injuries with the fire. Throughout taking care of the fire throughout the day with the fire department and us and on scene, so that's good news. But yeah, nothing of serious concern there. Traffic.
No, you're welcome to ask other questions if you have about certain areas in the neighborhood that you have some concerns with.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are
Yes,
eyes on the streets
I'm
and
kind of curious. There was I think it was a drug bust on Thompson, over by Hills Auto.
Okay. Was it a specific house that was there?
It was right next door to the Hills Auto.
So that there was it yesterday? Yep, so our K-9 team actually had training.
Yep.
So they weren't actually on duty necessarily. They were on duty, but they were just using that house as a training house. So they were dressing people up in their gear and doing kind of bite practices and different training there. So they had officers there for several hours yesterday, but they were all K-9 officers and they had all their dogs with them.
I thought it was taking an awful long time for them to take care of
Yep, so
it,
they do, it's once a month at least, if not more, that they're doing some sort of K-9 training where they're working with the other K-9 officers to practice new things and make sure that they're all on the same page. So yeah, that's what that was yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions?
Like I said, hopefully we'll be here more frequently, and if anything comes up, we can get a card for you guys and pass it along. Or if any questions that I can't answer at the moment, I can always get back to you and send you an email or a phone call.
Now, I have noticed that there has been something on the street, on certain streets, like going up Elm. I think you have some like on 3rd Avenue. So are you keeping track of traffic or speed of traffic or something on certain streets that's, it's like, this rubber tube or something that's going across the
Nothing that
road?
the police department is aware of. I think maybe the city might be doing some sort of tracking of traffic that's going through. It could be Department of Public Works that's doing that. I know the police department isn't directly placing those out and taking statistics from it, but it's my understanding that's used as like a tracking tool as well. But I don't know what action of the city is taking part in that. But
Okay. And we have worked with the police department. I have seen 3 buses within my little neighborhood where we worked with the police in the past to get those taken care of. So it's something, they may not be aware that we're the ones living in the neighborhood and doing the walk around the sidewalks and around the yards where they're driving by and not necessarily able to see everything that we can see or questioning.
Yeah.
so things like cars coming at all hours of the night, maybe several cars at one house that are different every day, or people kind of just looking suspicious. That's something that we're welcome to call we have a non-emergency dispatch number, so you can call them, and then we can get an officer just to kind of keep an eye on it. Just, like she was saying, we're not there. It's nice having the eyes on the streets and without having an officer present 24/7. So we really do appreciate that. We've had several different drug busts or certain things that we've addressed after those. So, yeah, we appreciate all of that.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much for coming. And how are you liking being in the neighborhood so far?
It's good. I do. I enjoy the west side quite a bit, and there's a lot more room over here
Yes.
to drive around.
Good.
So, yeah, I do
Good.
enjoy it.
Good. Okay, well, do you have any other questions about the neighborhood at this point? I had just mentioned before we started on camera that we will be having the park director as our guest speaker in May, and so the date is May 8th, not the 15th. And we're going to be talking about the playground and see if there's some other activities that we can do that would be keeping with the kind of the quiet neighborhood park theme, but offering a little bit more other activities in the future. So, well, at this point it's 6:39, so I think our guest speaker from Lockwood is not coming, though they were informed and we anticipated them coming, and they had said that they would be sending a representative, so I'm really quite disappointed about that, and maybe we can end up rescheduling something for like a Saturday morning at the Labor Temple as a way to get it, because next step, economic development did okay it, I believe, with one objection from Gary Gisselman, because it's not affordable housing, it's market rate housing. But it goes on to the planning, and then they'll be looking at the property, how it looks, how it's laid out, how it is on the lot, and looking at does it have adequate parking, and that is a concern, and it's something we want to make sure that we bring up. From my understanding, a few years ago, when they had the trolley flats, they only anticipated one parking spot per apartment, and that was totally inadequate and not allowing for visitors or for delivery people. So I believe a couple of years ago, they were able to buy some additional parking, I believe, from Pick and Save, I believe, so that they could have additional parking, but it's something normally when you're through the planning department, they're going through the nuts and bolts about what it's going to look like, what different features there are. I had inquired at the economic development meeting last Thursday that are you planning to have any type of playground for anticipating any children staying in this housing, but did not get an answer about if there's any plans for that. And then the lot closest to 17th Avenue is planned, the lower level, I believe where the A-frame is on that parcel. That's where they're planning to have a medical clinic and parking. But again, we don't know if there's anyone guaranteed or committing to being there, or is this just a building being constructed that may be vacant and not be occupied. So we don't know. At this point, I was going to say about the alderperson updates. It happens, two of our regular alderpersons that come to our meetings, Dennis Smith and Karen Kelbach, are at the airport meeting. I guess in past months they've met at 5:15, and then Dennis has been able to get here a little bit late. But Dennis had sent me a note that they were starting the meeting at 6 o'clock tonight, so that there was a conflict, and he was expecting not to, he was hoping to get here by 7, but it still has some time here. So it happens, Katie Rosenberg is here to kind of, she's been wanting to come to some of the neighborhood meetings and see what's going on. Yes,
I have a question.
yes,
We have a neighbor that doesn't shovel his sidewalk completely.
okay,
It's just a pathway. And the alleyway. I know he doesn't have to do anything with the alley, but there's the sidewalk going through there. Who's responsible for that alleyway sidewalk?
I can only get out one way this winter.
Well, yeah, and well, even the people walking, they have to walk out into the street.
well, from my understanding, and I guess with the bad snow weather we had this year, it was, that question was asked about the alleys, and it happens in my block, it is paved between 7th and 8th Avenue, between Elm and Maple. But it just seems that the people on the south end keep the south end of the alley open, and I guess the owner on the north end supposedly blows his snow into the alley to keep it closed. So, and I guess I'm hearing that in some other areas, and it just happens, for our block, we've had people with snow blowers, and it seems like some neighbors that may be in the middle of the block that have snow blowers help one way or the other, and
Yeah.
and the next alley over, I help a senior with her garage off the alley between 7th and 6th. And they keep it open on both ends, but the approach on the north end is quite steep, and so cars bottom out. So they prefer actually coming and going on the south end of the alley.
Yeah.
But
I just mean the sidewalk. You know,
Yeah,
he
it's
has a snow
totally
blower,
blocked off.
and it might be like a 24-inch.
yes,
That's all that he blows. He
well,
blows
that's
one
not
half.
considered adequate. And
No, I know. And, you know, it's, like when I go to visit her, then I have to slip and slide
Uh-huh,
on there, and it's just scary. I don't want to walk in the road,
right.
so.
Right, it's something that engineering should be looking at, but if you want to alert me, or you can alert, you have Dennis Smith as your older person
Yes,
too,
yes.
right? Dennis is a good guy at getting on to stuff like
Okay.
that. He was a former police officer, so he's one of those guys that gets on it and will make sure it gets resolved one way or the other. But the alleys do become an issue, and especially the winter we had, even, I can't imagine someone trying to hand shovel what we had this past week.
I tried.
I would be doing that.
Yeah.
Well, when it's in smaller,
Well,
manageable, but even for me, I like shoveling, but when it gets to the deep stuff, between my neighbors and some teenagers and we were using my snow blower and helping other neighbors for over 6 hours that bad
I have a
snowstorm.
little sidewalk around my house, so I shovel that.
Well, I shoveled, like when it would snow so heavy, I would go out and shovel like every 3-4 times, so I didn't have all that.
And that's a good thing, and where I grew up in the UP, that's what we did before snow blowers. We would go out every 2 hours.
I know
And shovel?
how you were.
And I have a Uper scooper where it's a big aluminum scoop. But since I have my snow blower, it just seems like the snow blower seems to do it a lot easier. But, and I try to be a good neighbor and help my other neighbors out. But not everyone has access to a snow blower. And everybody was running ragged, I think, this winter.
Oh, yeah.
Any other question about neighborhood issues or?
Other than I've noticed a lot of dog poop under the snow
Yes,
It's revealing itself to
out
me.
front
yeah.
on the boulevard, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's been talked about too on Nextdoor about dog poop showing up now after winter, and I guess for me, even in my yard, I got behind it, but I got out there with the melting snow and took care of my pug stuff.
I know, but that's your property. You know what
I
mean?
understand.
And
Yeah.
when people take their dogs for a walk, you need to take a bag with you, come on.
Right.
I've seen people
And, you
just
know-
pick snow over it and
Yeah.
then keep walking.
Well, that's not appropriate, and I guess I'm hoping with part of what we can do with the neighborhood park, or maybe some other grant funding, come up with some bags and a little post so that we can encourage that, just in case.
It'll be ripped off.
But yes, that could happen too. But yeah, it's something I've heard of some neighbors just walking out there when that's happening and handing them
Okay.
a grocery bag. So, and I think they're more likely to do that when you're right there standing over them, type of thing. But yes, that's one of the, I think, advantages for neighborhoods compared to, high-rise apartment living, is to be able to have pets. And in our area, we do have a lot of neighbors with pets.
Yeah, and some people live alone, and it just helps them out,
Mhm.
you know?
Right.
They got companionship.
That is true.
Yeah.
And for myself, I've been a dog owner now for the first time for the last 6 years. And then some of the officers have said in the last few years, the best security you can have is a DOG. You don't need anything fancy, but that is a good thing, and it's good to see all the people with the different dogs out there, and I have helped, and we seem to, have a pretty good handle about when someone loses a dog. We get the word out there,
Yeah.
both on Facebook and Nextdoor, or people going around and trying to help, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, Katie, if you don't mind, we'd like to use your wisdom temporarily while we're waiting for Dennis Smith to come, and you're on the county board, and there has been some recent updates. Especially, I don't know if you want to talk about the healthcare center.
I think I'll talk about two things, because we have a lot going on, but
Okay.
the two hot button issues. The one is North Central Healthcare. You've probably read about the comments. So last year, the county board approved a $73 million project to renovate the campus. It's updating, it includes the aquatic therapy pool, it includes updates to the nursing home, it also includes 2 new structures, and one of them is a youth hospital for kids under 18 with mental illness and in crisis, and that's not something we have right now. And then the other new structure is community-based, we call it a CVRF, it's community-based residential facility. So you go there for treatment for addiction. And those are 2 new structures, and if you know what the North Central looks like, there's a grassy field that's kind of in front of these pine trees, and so those 2 structures, when the plan came out, were right there, kind of up against Marshall Street, which is the one that runs right in front of it. And the neighbors were all noticed for the plan commission, and they saw these 2 new buildings, and they were like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to react to this at the plan commission? So there were some concerns about how close those buildings are to the street. So we've had several meetings to kind of discuss this, and actually the plan has changed. They pushed those buildings a little bit back. I think the biggest thing that North Central has been trying to get across to people is that these programs already exist. Aside from that youth crisis hospital, these programs exist at North Central already. So there were some concerns, and those people already kind of live there. But you know, it is taking up some of the green space, kind of the view, things like that. There is another meeting if you're super interested in this and you want to get nerdy about it. There's another meeting. It's at North Central Healthcare at their theater this Thursday. That's tomorrow. It starts at 5:30 and it goes until 8. So if you're interested, you can see the plan. I anticipate a couple of people there. The last week's meeting wasn't very highly attended. So are there any questions about North Central I can answer? That's kind of my area of expertise. I'm on the Health and Human Services Committee, so that's what I get into.
I was gonna mention that I'm a warm pool user.
Yeah.
And I heard there was a delay in your groundbreaking until maybe July. But is there any definite plans for what will happen to that old wing as part of the renovations?
So that is part of the discussion. They want to keep that pool open until the new pool is built,
Right.
because obviously you have people using it and they need it to stay mobile. But you know, there are a lot of discussions about that. You know, they talked about maybe putting the morgue over there. They talked about some other, but you know,
The morgue is not a bad idea when you've
Yeah.
got all this tile and tiled, bathrooms and changing rooms. So it's not far out,
Don't
actually.
they have like a criminal lab in that area anyway?
The crime lab, it's not in that area. It's up
Over by
that
76
way. Yeah.
Okay.
But this would be new. We don't have a regional morgue, so I mean, you have officers. You probably know. I mean, I don't know if you specifically, but I know on the county side, they're driving bodies, to Madison to, check out. The hospitals around here are running out of space for this. It's a big issue. So that's one of the new things. The plan is still in the works. I feel like saying that it could be placed there could cause some more controversy, but I'm willing to take it because that's part of the discussion. They've also talked about some of the social services moving over there. The stuff that's on Thomas Street right now that the county runs, moving it over so they're close to the other services that are available through the county. So that's still in discussion. They actually don't know what's under there. There's a lot of metal rebar and stuff, so they don't really know, like, was there a bunch of problems from the pool leaking in there? It's just really hard to tell. So they're gonna, once they get in there, they'll find out. But the plan is to do something else there. And obviously the county has a ton of buildings, so they would like to consolidate in some way. So it's just, how does that look? So yeah, good question. I don't know if it's delayed until July. I don't know if that's the case. I know that is the very first thing that we're going to do is build that pool, because obviously the community was so generous and gave $3 million of their own dollars to that, so it's a big deal.
Right, I was part with some of the other users and helping do the grant, and I had talked to Brenda, and I said to Brenda over a year ago, I said, I've worked on other grants, and if we come up with 50%, I'm pretty positive the county will do it.
Yeah, that was
And then,
amazing.
So,
That's where all my Christmas money went that year.
and I believe it was required to raise $2.5 million in, I think, 4 or 5 months. So it was a fairly short period of time. And it
was a testament to the need. There are a lot of people that use that, and just the generosity of this community. It's amazing. So I think we should all be proud of that. And I especially am, because it's in my district. Okay, I thought I would pick up on something that we talked about recently at County Board that is specific to your district, the campus, the UWSB and Wausau campus. So we had an update from I think it was Bernie Patterson mostly. And they talked about, what's ahead for that campus. And they said that in addition to having new 2-year and 4-year degrees, they're going to have that MBA program. But then they also mentioned a 3-year degree program where you could earn your degree. I mean, usually it takes you 4 years and 3 years, so be accelerated. They said that talking to business owners and just people who want degrees, that there's a desire and a market for this 3-year degree. So they're talking about, they're doing this, and they actually have, UWSP Foundation has said that they'll put in $100,000 in scholarship funds specifically for people doing that program on this campus. So it's a big deal. The new degrees that they have for this campus too, I'm just looking through human services, health sciences, things like that, social work. There's a lot of need around here. You have the opioid crisis. You need a lot of social workers. You need people to be able to fill those positions. So that's really, they're focusing on that. And actually with their MBA program, they're targeting it to central Wisconsin. They're working with local businesses. Now, what kind of skills do you need? So that's kind of where they're headed with that. Just trying to see if there's anything. They gave us some stats that were pretty interesting. I didn't get a chance to check them, but they said the UWSP economic impact across Portage, Marathon, and Wood counties, where all the campuses are located. They gave it to us as $671 million. And it's a big economic impact, over 6,000 jobs thanks to these campuses. So it's an important part of our community. One of the things that I said at the county board was that this campus especially, the 2-year, we need to keep it open, and we need access for our local students. It needs to be an entrance point for them. They need to be able to move on if they want to, or leave with their 2-year degree and go to work. We're seeing at NTC and UWSP, these kids right out of high school, they're getting some of the specialized training in high school already. They're being offered $20 an hour jobs right out of high school, so there are a lot of options for these kids. So we need to make sure they have access to these programs. So that's what I have for you.
I had a question about when the Aging and Disability Resource Center relocated. It happens, my dentist is over on the Stewart Avenue, but it's in the basement, in the middle of the building. So not very accessible for people. I guess I was wondering, how did it get moved there instead of like at Wausau Center Mall or downtown?
Yeah,
I guess I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they made those decisions. Now, Marathon County contributes to the ADRC,
Okay.
but it's not necessarily our programming. I think it's 5 counties maybe, and I think they have their own board, so they would have made some of those decisions and just let us know. So I'm not quite sure how they came to that. I don't know if you've met the new ADRC director.
I've
Jeanette
seen
Barnes.
her.
She's amazing. You should bring her into one of your meetings.
I think that we will do that.
Her name's
She
Jonette
seems-
Arms. She is fabulous. She actually came up here from Milwaukee, where she ran similar programming. And she likes it up here. It's a little slower, quieter, and she's really able to, get into it. So she's amazing. You should definitely invite her to one of these meetings. And maybe she'll have an answer to that. They probably moved that without her being on board yet. Also, I think it was before her.
Yeah, I realize it was there
Yeah,
before she came.
it's tough.
Anybody-
That access is tough.
Yeah, that's a distance to go.
Yes.
Yeah, and I know it was tough to have that moved out of North Central as well.
Yeah.
Is there any more discussion at the Marathon County Board level about how things are working out with the courthouse and the jail? I guess I feel when you look at the jail and the courthouse and all the law office nearby and such, it just seems like we need to keep it where it is, in my opinion. And I'm just wondering, has there been any discussion by the board of potentially taking out of the courthouse non-courthouse related things and putting it in other offices, say in the mall or near downtown, so that you can just make the courthouse footprint jail and courthouse?
Yeah, so that is a big discussion. I anticipated that we would be having that discussion a little sooner than we are. Public health and safety is tasked with that. And they have been discussing it. Obviously, if we renovate or, build a new jail, and that's a $70 million project that doesn't generate revenue, right? So it's a big discussion, and there's not a ton of desire to build a bigger jail. So the facility planning is something we're talking about. We talked about the North Central and moving some of those services closer. That's a discussion, right? Like kind of putting like services together. We have property along River Drive on the riverfront. So, is that something, I know that the city of Wausau kind of looked at that and they're like, oh, that could be part of our development plan. What do you think? So a lot of moving parts. The county administrator, or maybe even better, the deputy county administrator, Vince Leonard, has been kind of involved in those moving parts discussions of facilities. So he might be able to update you a little bit better on that. It's really tough right now with that security that you need at the courthouse. And we need it, right? Like judges need to be safe. Everyone that enters there needs to be safe. But when we go for meetings, for instance, we have to pay deputies to be there overtime. So it's one of those things that it creates kind of an access issue. So a lot of our county meetings, we're trying to cram it in between the hours of when they're open. So it's been a discussion too. Like, do we move those meeting rooms? Do we have them elsewhere? So that's a good question.
In my opinion, Sears seems ideal that you could end up having an underground tunnel or a sky walk or whatever as a way to have some other activities move over there, but and I guess if there's some changes made in sentencing and looking at DUIs and drug treatment, that may change how many people are being incarcerated.
Yeah, we do have an OWI court, and we just started recently a drug court, so similar things where you get treatment instead of, in theory, treatment. I can't speak for the city side when it comes to that Sears building. I'm gonna guess though that they want to put something in there that generates revenue, right? Expands the tax base instead of government office buildings. I'm not sure. I'm sure they've had conversations with the county that I'm not privy to. But yeah, the other thing about sentencing is, we're seeing from the state level a desire to maybe move 17-year-olds back to juvenile. So it's one of those. We have that big facility out by Sunnyvale. It's not very full because 17-year-old offenders are put in with the adults. So it's one of those things that we're discussing. We don't necessarily want to close that if we're going to have more people in influx. So.
Right.
I did not expect to have to talk about anything at this meeting. I was just going to listen to this developer and yeah, I can leave some cards if you're interested in emailing me. Otherwise, your representative is Allison Leahy. I know that she's driving through a snowstorm right now, so I let her know that I was here.
Well, Katie had mentioned about coming to some of the neighborhood meetings, and each neighborhood meeting is slightly different, so that's great.
Hop on by the southeast side if you ever want to, or it's at the little airport.
Well, I guess I got a little tidbit about that. And some of your southeast side neighborhood, basically, I think it's been said, unless you live here, you really should not be attending our meetings.
I can't imagine you getting kicked out of a
So,
you can be my
I don't think we want to be considered as spies, but that your neighborhood has done a great job in fundraising and in redoing the airport park, and it's just a crown jewel as such. So it's something. I don't think we have the resources in our neighborhood to do it to that level, and you're just very fortunate that you've been able to do that, as well as have the races on the runway where I don't think all we could do is probably run around John Muir or run around West High.
the river, or
Well, you'd have to close off some streets or whatever. So, but all right, thank you, Katie. Well, any other questions at this point?
We have someone from our community resource unit that's in the area, and he said he could stop by. If you have further questions, he might actually have a printout for our police report too. If you'd like it, otherwise we pass it along at the next meeting.
Okay,
I don't know what time frame you guys look at for the meeting. You know, it's running just over an hour. That would be him. I answered a lot of questions, I was just mentioning we're about to, I think, tie things up, but.
you mind?
Area access.
We decided to tape the meeting.
It will be on YouTube and television, yes.
Okay, I can't have you record me because of the job I do, I can't be
Thank
on
you.
camera.
Can you just say that?
I can absolutely stand in the back of the room, I'm totally okay.
What's your voice okay?
Yeah,
Thank you.
so I'm Officer Olson, Jake could not be here tonight, so you guys have to stop in and see if you had any questions for me, so I'm happy to try to answer.
Well,
for you,
excuse,
whatever,
is there something, Dave, we could do in editing to take his face out?
Yeah, we could if you want. To be honest, the safest thing to do is stay off camera.
but- Yeah,
If I were him, I would do that.
Okay,
just given the nature of what we do, let's not.
should I bring the audio over so that, we want to make sure that we can hear you?
Oh, sure, no problem, I have a
Because
pretty loud voice.
we were expecting the housing development at Mountain Lane to be
Okay.
talked about, so we thought this was an important meeting
Hey,
to
absolutely.
put on video.
Social media is a great way to get around information to people. People watch more stuff on YouTube and Facebook than they watch in person anytime, so. But any questions that you guys have, concerns? While you're thinking, so the briefing sheets, hopefully we will be able to have statistics for you again for the neighborhoods very soon.
Okay,
With our new computer program that we've gotten in Maritime County for dispatching and records management and stuff, there is a application of that we just recently received some training on that allows us to kind of do the same thing that we were doing as far as pulling statistics of crimes for a specific geographical area. So hopefully in the next couple months here, they're starting to get that implemented. I'm told, thought they said starting June. People are getting trained in it now. So hopefully, yet this year for sure, we should have those back. I know a lot of people in the other groups I attend are very excited about that and having that available to see and know what's going on. So
it is good. It happens that in certain areas, especially in school zones, that if you're having teenagers, there tends to be maybe a lot more speeding on certain streets.
absolutely.
And I know it's been talked about in other neighborhoods as well. And I guess I was hoping as part of our discussion about mountain lanes to look at how are they going to exit? And are they going to be trying to make a left-hand turn from 1401 Elm to go on to 17th Avenue? And it happens that there's buses, the city bus goes down from, I'm not sure if it's from Elm or 12th or 14th,
Okay.
going down to Elm and 17th
Okay.
every half hour.
Okay.
And then you also have the school buses that are coming from 17th Avenue and then turning over at 14th to go to John Muir.
Yep.
In that area. And it just seems that we might end up having more of a bottleneck, and I can understand that they may not want a one-way right exit,
Okay.
but it may be helpful instead of having a left turn of all these people in, what is it, within 100 feet of the stoplight.
Okay. I guess this might be a foolish question, and that's not on it because it's not my neighborhood group. Are they doing something with that property? Do we know what the purpose is?
Well,
after Mountain Lanes is gone?
That's what we were gonna be talking about tonight, but.
Is there ideas out there?
We were hoping we'd talk about that tonight,
Okay.
but they did not show.
Okay.
Even though they had
Who were you
invitation.
expecting?
So,
Who were you expecting to come?
Lock Rear Investments
Okay.
from Plover, they were
Okay.
at the Economic Development meeting on
Got it.
Tuesday night.
Okay.
And Victor Anderson, who I spoke to, had said that they planned on coming, and I left the messages and they did not indicate that they were not coming, so.
Okay. I just wondered too, with the weather going on, you never know.
Well, I don't know what the weather is down in Plover too.
Yeah, we were down there earlier today, and it's kind of similar to this.
Okay,
So, but what I can do is I can leave a message for Jake, like our unknown person tomorrow, and I see him that the concerns over what that property is possibly going to be used for, and the possible traffic issues, and see what he can find out for you prior to
Okay.
next month, if that would help.
all right, that would be great.
anything else? Any questions about the big incident next door?
Well, we did talk about it slightly.
Okay.
I guess, I've heard that it was one of the best places, for renters to come and get things washed
Mhm.
in the area. So I've heard there's potentially thousands of people that are, were using, going to that building. So, I would think it's gonna be difficult. I mean, we do have, I think, a washing well on North Third Avenue,
Yeah.
which is quite small, and
There's
maybe.
another one up on Suds, I believe it's called, on 6th Street, up north of Bridge there, a couple blocks. There's a laundromat up there.
Okay,
Is the one on Thomas Street still open? Is the
No.
one- Is that one been
He
closed?
said laundry, I'm not sure if that's.
No.
Well, there's two of them on
I
Thomas
think
Street. The
it's
one on the
been
west
closed for a
side, I
while.
think, is
Yeah.
open. But there's one over near the police department as well, about a block over by, you know where the Bowlsball Brewery is?
yes,
Right off their back
Oh,
lot,
yes.
there to the north, there's that one as well. So certainly a little bit of a traveling distance,
That's
but
the place to go where the policemen are.
well,
It does.
I was gonna say where, this may be ahead of your time, but back, I think, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I think there was a sexual assault at that laundromat, by Big Bull Falls, and,
yeah, it must have been a while back, because I've been here for going on 14 years, and I don't know that I remember
There
that.
was a girl that was beaten.
Or
No, she was beaten pretty badly.
okay.
Yeah. I worked at the hospital
But
at
that
time,
is
yeah.
small in comparison to, this one, and I did try calling Mr. Emmerich's, company today, and they have no idea what their plans are at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a little early to know if they're gonna rebuild, or how the whole thing's gonna go as far as insurance and all that type of stuff. Those things take some time to iron out. So I mean, yeah, I hopefully in the near future that there'll be some information on that, if he plans to rebuild, or what he plans to do on the site instead, or.
Right.
But, yeah, kind of a big loss. It's been there a long time.
There's a laundry over by North End Pub.
Yeah, right across the north end pub, there's that small one there by 3rd and West Union as well.
Okay,
But that's a little bit smaller as well. It's the building that shared, I believe, a hairdresser in there as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
now, are you seeing, oh, there's our older person. Are you seeing now with the warming shelter closed, that there's a kind of a increase in number of homeless, with issues, or?
Did the warming shelter close yet?
I thought they closed April 1st.
Oh, they were open as of yesterday, because I was actually there, so.
Oh, they were?
I don't know if they pushed it back, or is it,
I don't think they've given us an exact date now,
Yeah.
I believe they've pushed it back.
Oh, okay,
maybe with some of the snow coming in, they tried to stay open a little bit longer?
okay, because, in talking to a few people that watched the news today, they claimed the arsonist was a homeless person, upset that he wasn't able to sleep in the laundromat.
I would always caution to be wary of that type of information. My understanding is from past contact with the gentleman that he was transient. He did struggle with having a permanent place to stay.
Okay,
I don't know that, I don't know all the details, so I'll certainly go, I don't know that other part is, if that's true or false, I don't know.
okay,
But I do know that he's had some troubles with some transient issues in the city, as far as long as he's been here, so.
okay. Well, and I understand the Salvation Army has, a pretty strict who is allowed to come in, and no drinking, no drugs, or depending on the criminal activity in the past, that may limit, but that normally Catholic Charities doesn't hold that against who can stay in the shelter.
Yeah, they have a little bit different function, Catholic Charities is simply for the most part a nice warm place to stay. Certainly they have other services they offer, but with the Salvation Army, they do have some very strict rules, like they require you that if you're staying there, you're working towards job applications, you're working, in their store to help further. They're basically, they want you to be productive while also being there. And if people don't follow those rules, yeah, they can be kicked out for, 30 days or longer, or permanently, depending on what the violation of those rules are. So yeah, there are some rules associated with staying there.
Are you finding there's an number of activity. It happens, I was recently at the Salvation Army dropping off some grocery bags and shopping bags for their pantry, and when I came back, there was 5 police squads, and they seemed to be making an arrest on the sidewalk, just in their parking lot, going towards the bike shop.
Was that just recently?
Within the last month or so.
Okay. I was gonna say, I was trying to remember what that might be. I mean, and that could be anything from, traffic stop to
A person
walking to somebody walked away from an incident. And I don't know the specific details of that one, but I mean, it could just be something unrelated. I mean, I think the question you're asking is there some problems with homelessness in Wausau? Absolutely. You've all seen on the news, they do the homeless counts, and there's a lot of different agencies in the city and Marathon County trying to address that homeless problem. Yeah, there's a lot of them like to frequent the laundromat at times in the winter when it was cold out. Yeah, I'm certain that was the case. How that's going to affect that not being there anymore, how that's going to affect issues with the transiency of the homelessness, it's too early to say, obviously, but it could have an effect. Yeah, I mean, certainly we have had calls there in the past for people loitering that were not supposed to be there, or they weren't washing their laundry, they were just simply hanging out for a place to hang out.
It happens, one of my neighbors on Second Avenue, he lives between the fish market and the house on the corner in Alexander.
Okay.
And I guess I've noticed some people loitering around the dairy corner and that and such, and that I understand it's not on Salvation Army property, and but I don't know, and maybe it's something I should ask Christine to talk to the police about and see, and I guess I am aware we have had the officers from the Salvation Army here, so I guess by going around their area doesn't mean necessarily that the police aren't making calls. They're more likely, if there's issues, to be calling you.
Yeah, I would say people generally do call us if there's concerns. Where are they hanging out? Is it like on the street corner? Or
Right at the street corner, at the dairy, right at Alexander and Second Avenue.
Certain times of the day, or is it at night? Or?
I guess I noticed it last Friday, I believe, right after 4 o'clock, and it just happens this neighbor's lived in his home for 25 years, and it looks at the dairy and the shelter. So, and over the years, he has changed his landscaping to have very little, because he's had, cans and bottles in his yard and people sleeping in his yard. And a few years ago, his wife went to open the garage door, and someone was sleeping in his 2-story shed garage.
Okay. Yeah, and certainly I'm hoping all those things are getting reported to us. Yeah, I'm hoping all those things are getting reported to us, like people sleeping in his yard, people sleeping in his shed.
So should I have him try to see if we can set up like a coffee meeting or something, so that...
Or just something as simple as make sure that he knows when that stuff is calling to call us at the time. If
Okay,
there's someone sleeping in his yard, if he sees people chucking bottles in his yard, if he sees people, certainly if he finds people sleeping in his shed, those are all crimes. I mean, there's trespassing issues there's loitering citations, but there's also littering citations, so if they're chucking garbage in his flower beds, they could be cited for littering. A lot of times we find with those things is people don't always call us when they're happening, and it's very hard for us to do anything with that down the road or in the future. If we can get called right when it's happening, we can find out who that person is. If they want to pursue trespassing charges, there's potentially trespassing charges. At the very least, if they don't want them charged, but they want to find out who they are and make sure they don't have to be back on that property, we can come over, identify them, make it clear to them like, hey, you're not to be here, and if you come back, you could be cited or arrested for trespassing. But the biggest thing is just call us when those things happen. Officers, 24 hours a day, Ben works all night long. Several of us do. I don't so much anymore, but we have an officer come out when those things are happening so they can address them each time. As far as just standing on the street corner itself, that one might be tough. We can certainly try to have a conversation with people, find out why they're there, and maybe encourage them to move along if we can. But it's not necessarily legal to stand on the street corner, so we can't like force somebody away from the corner.
Well, and I understand, but this is, the dairy where it's brick, right up to the sidewalk,
If it's
so
the business
it's,
property, they could call us. I mean, certainly the business, same thing as the property owner. If like people are on their property or up against their building doing that, and they don't want to have that happen, they can certainly call as well when that's happening, and that can be addressed as well.
well, I will contact Christine.
Yeah, let them know, and certainly, like I said, call us when it happens, please, 'cause we can certainly identify the people and find out who they are, and, you know, if they're on probation, or if the trespassing citation is appropriate, or an arrest for trespassing, depending on what they're doing, and
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any other questions?
I don't know if maybe our alderman has any more information on possible uses for the Mountain Lanes building. Have you heard anything at all?
Well, Dennis came from the airport meeting.
Okay,
Dennis, we are taping, because I had thought,
we'll be a little closer to him.
the developer was gonna be here, so do you mind just coming up front so we can just get a picture of you if you wanna give an update, but the developer did not show.
He did not show. I'll tell you what I know, which won't take long.
Okay, well, I just thought because of the important information that we should videotape it so we could share it with the neighborhood and such, and I did attend the economic development meeting, and I was hoping they were gonna have their architectural plans here, and we learned more information, and,
Well, there was some information in the finance packet.
and I made copies of what was in the economic development, and I do have like a short little piece, but I think our neighbors had a number of questions, and
Well, this hasn't only gone to finance, this hasn't gone to council yet.
right, but this was from economic development, and, so if you don't mind,
Well, it is, I'll tell you what I know, is this line here.
Dave said you could just set it down and.
Yeah, Dennis, you could go ahead and set it on the table if you'd like.
Okay.
Just make sure not to put papers on it, sir.
That way,
Thank you.
we don't have to forget about taking it off.
Okay,
All right, they're gonna develop the old mountain lanes that has been there forever. I know that they were there when I was dating my wife, and next month we'll be married 53 years, so. In fact, I think I got asked to leave there one time having a few too many beers, so that's in my younger days. They're going to be developing a number of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments with supposedly underground parking. The rents are going to be, and then don't hold me to this, but they for a 1-bedroom about $850, and with a 2-bedroom with a garage, it's going to be about $1,400. And when we discussed this last night at the finance meeting, my concern is we're building, in my estimation, we're building too many high-end apartments. We've got, supposedly they keep on threatening they're gonna build something on the riverfront. I think that's gonna start a couple days after Christ shows up. And then they've got one over on West Hill Drive. Swiderski's building a building, and Swiderski's building another one on Stevens and Randolph. And what I mentioned last night was, I think we're forgetting about people that have modest incomes. They'd like a nice place to live too.
Thank you, I would.
And a lot of people don't have $850, $950, or $1,400 a month to spend for housing. Let me get my notes. I've got some statistics for you. I'll have to walk away from the mic just a
Okay,
little. I won't
that's
say
all right.
anything. Some research I did for the finance meeting. Now, this is not to say that the city has not been involved in some moderate price housing. They did the old Sabo building, that's kind of moderate. Trolley Flats is moderate. We've got some duplexes going up down on Thomas Street that are gonna be supposedly moderate. But that's great, but that's still not enough. We need to do more. I did some research off of our website. 47% of the households in Wausau make less than $35,000 a year. And 48%, if you were going to rent an apartment there, if you went a one-bedroom apartment, you'd be spending 35% of your monthly income for housing, not including utilities. If you rented one of the two bedrooms, you'd be spending 48% of your disposable income. The normal recommended rate for housing and utilities is 30%. And so my big concern is, I think this is a nice project, it'll add to the tax base, but people weren't elected to represent the tax base, they were represented to represent their people that elected them. And I think there's a certain segment that's being neglected, and I would like to see that moving forward, I'd like to see more projects involved, especially if they involve city money. If a person's gonna build something on their own, they can build whatever they want, and they can charge whatever they want. But this project asks for city money over 8 years, and not a great deal of money over 8 years, but still, the city is spending taxpayer money for this, and I think that we need to spend more taxpayer money for more moderately priced housing for people, because not everybody makes $75,000, $80,000 a year. And that was my one concern with it. Not saying I'm against the project, I voted for it because it'll add to the tax base, but what I tried to stress at the meeting is we need to take a look at more moderate income housing also. And I'm sure there's spots in there, and I'm sure contractors would build that if we gave them the opportunity. And if we're gonna spend city money, we should probably spend it on that also. But as far as I know, it's gonna be a fairly upscale complex, it's gonna look nice. If you'll go online in the packet for the finance meeting, there's some color renderings of it and so on.
Okay,
And then if you wanted to share those on neighborhood and so on.
I'll do that.
And the people that are building this are good people, they're very established, they're not like Mike Franz, who didn't have two dimes to rub together. Speaking, I got a story about Mike Franz. They finally got the North End Hotel, which he was involved in and went belly up. They finally got that completed, another contractor came in, and they were showing it on TV. And I swear I saw Mike busting one of the tables in the restaurant there. That's about what he's doing now. But like I said, all I know is they're building some 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, and there's gonna be underground parking. And it's certainly gonna be better than Mountain Lanes, which has kind of lived out its life. There for a while, it was a bar run by a couple of people, and I got all kinds of complaints from the neighbors at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's noise in the parking lot, cars speeding out of there and so on. So I'm sure that people there will welcome these apartments more than they did Mountain Lanes. So if I get any other questions, I can answer. Everybody knows their water rates are going up, right?
I thought that they raised the water rates a while back. That was supposed to help change, or that they were gonna get more equipment. Yeah.
Well, they may have got some new equipment in, but these, first of all, the modification to the water treatment plant, as opposed to the sewage treatment plant, is pretty much mandated by our good friends down in Madison, mainly for phosphorus. We're trying to get more phosphorus out of the water, even though we're not the ones putting it in. It's the farmers that are putting the fertilizer in the field that are putting the phosphorus in the streams, and it's ending up in the river. But anyway, Madison, the good people in the Republic of Madison doesn't care about that. They want to make us some modifications. And we did have some other things that we needed to correct. This last flooding situation we had a couple weeks ago, it almost maxed out the water treatment plant, or not the water treatment plant, but the sewage treatment plant. Once that gets maxed out, this stuff flows back upstream into people's basements. We don't want. I had that happen to me once in Illinois. You do not want that to happen to you. That is nasty.
Yes, it is.
Moving the water treatment plant is a much less expensive procedure. It's going to put it on the west side. The majority of the Wausau wells are on the west side of the river. We've got one on the east side, but the majority are on the west side. Then we'd be piping a lot less expense and moving the water from the wells into the new treatment plant and so on. It's going out in a place that's unobtrusive. It won't be in anybody's way, lower anybody's property taxes. And I don't know what they'll do with the old building. I don't, if they'll develop it or tear it down or whatever.
Excuse me, Dennis, I had thought that Eric Lindman had recommended and the city had bought property in just north of Evergreen for future water use and wells.
Well, we did buy property, and I voted against that because I didn't felt we needed it. But they did buy a well out by Maine, town of Maine. There's a well out there. Actually, it's a future well. It doesn't exist now. It probably will be definitely built in the future. But the majority of our, I think we have 6 wells. The majority of them, we've only got one on the east side, and every one of the other ones is on, from what I understand, is on the west side of the river, which is where the new plant will be, is on the west side of the river, up by, kind of north of NTC, and so on.
Okay.
But everybody, you know, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it for you people. You will notice a difference in your water rates. And, it's just, and that's how it's financed. It's financed by the water rates.
Can't the cities kind of slow this down and work with the new governor and maybe other people now changing in the DNR so that we can do this as a regional commission, whether it's, you know, Schofield and Rothschild gets on board with us, or Weston, and so to me it just makes sense. Now is the time to make it a water and wastewater regional commission, and then
I'm not sure we can do that.
those costs are absorbed, but then they also should be represented on the commission.
Well, first of all, I'm not sure we can do that. That would, you know, that's a legal question I can't answer for you. I don't know if we can join. I know that we can't even run our buses out to Red Mountain. We can't develop a regional transportation authority. We can't go outside the confines of the city. We wanted to do that at one time and the state would not let us.
Okay.
But I'm not sure about how we would do a regional. But keep in mind that we process sewage for Weston and Schofield also, so they're gonna feel some of the pain too.
But then why aren't they on that commission if they're?
But there isn't a commission. We have the sewage treatment plant and the water plant belong to the city of Wausau. It's financed by us and funded by us, and whatever service that we provide water to Maine, they pay for it. And we process sewage. I don't think we provide any water to Weston or Schofield, but we do process their sewage and they pay for that. I'm not aware of any central commission.
Well, they do have the water commission that.
Well, we have a water commission that has people on it, makes a decision on what goes on in the water plant. That's just a group of people. That's not a conglomerate of other communities.
Well, that's what I was thinking, that if it became a regional commission, or why aren't members from Weston, Bend, and Schofield on that commission?
Because we just provide them a service. They don't have any say on, if we wanted to modify a plant, we don't have to ask Schofield and Weston. We do whatever we want because it's our plant. We happen to process their sewage, but they don't have any say on what we do or how we process it. They're just like a customer. You go in and get your car fixed, you don't have any say about what the guy does your car over what you told him. That's just the way it is. We just provide a service. They're just a customer. That's all they are.
Well, it just seems that, to me, if these other communities are gonna face the same issue with the DNR, that it's better for us to work together as a team and do it kind of as a region, but that I could see that Schofield isn't just gonna wanna take the word of Wausau, thinking, okay, they're buying, gold pipes or whatever, that they would wanna have input and be part of the process on what the costs are, the bids, as a way to kind of get them on board that, yes, it's gonna be cheaper if we do this as a regional commission.
How's it gonna be cheaper? We're still gonna.
Well, because it's just not, if it's Wausau doing it,
That's who's doing it.
and then these other communities like Red Mountain and Schofield and Weston need to do it as well, if they wanna meet the standards and run it on their own, then there's this like duplicate of excessive construction that it makes sense to come together as a region and fund it.
I'm not following your reasoning. If Schofield decides to build a waste treatment plant, they're gonna build it on their own. That's not gonna have any impact on Wausau, except maybe we won't process their sewage anymore. I don't understand how them building something is going to save Wausau money.
Well, I guess I kind of compare it like to the central Wisconsin airport. It's a way to have a central airport where other municipalities are sharing some of the costs.
The
And,
airport belongs to the county. County runs the airport.
okay,
That's a county project. That's not, any other municipality, that's the county. Now, that's the whole county, so
okay. Or
technically,
similar to North Central Healthcare, where it's multiple counties that have decided on these services that are gonna be provided, and they're all kind of sharing the cost and services to residents of those counties.
okay, but I don't understand how you feel doing that for the wastewater and the water treatment is gonna save us any money. They're not gonna build their own facilities.
Well, they may be looking at doing that, and instead of doing it, decide to come with Wausau to make it a regional. So it would say, I guess I'd like to just share this cost, not just with 39,000 people. I'd like to share it like with 75 if it's in the metro area,
Whoever
and so that we
would
don't have $200 increases in a quarterly budget.
You're not gonna get $200 in a quarter.
That's what I had heard.
Well, that's, I heard that once there was a Santa Claus too, but I found out the reason. He didn't bring me that pony that I wanted when I was 11. It's about $15 for your water bill and about $22 for your waste treatment.
Okay,
And that's per month, so you add it up, it's about $70-some, $74 and something for a quarter. Which is a substantial increase. I mean, and keep in mind, when I voted for that, I'm raising my own rates too. I'm just not raising other people's rates, and I get to keep the old rates.
right.
But it's something that has to be done, and the majority of the expense is mandated by the state, changing our waste treatment process and adding some stuff. I made a suggestion, and I think it's gonna come about, and I would encourage people to do it. In May, they're gonna try and set up some tours for the citizens on a Saturday to tour the water treatment plant and to tour the wastewater plant. They're gonna be about an hour tour of each one, and they'll show you what needed to be done, especially down at the wastewater. I took that tour shortly after I became an alderman on my first term. I'm not too keen on going down to the wastewater plant during the summer. That's not a great idea. I'm much rather go in February. But you'll notice the difference between the water treatment plant and the wastewater plant, I can assure you.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating process. I mean, let's face it, we flush our toilets, we don't think anything about it. But somebody has to deal with it. On downstream, they're dealing with it and so on. And it's a fascinating process, what has to happen with that sewage and so on. And I think those are gonna be occurring in May, so I would, there'll be some press releases and so on. And I would encourage people, if you can, to go and take the tour, because it is very interesting. It'll really open your eyes as to what the city provides for fresh water coming out of your tap, and then what happens when you flush the toilet and so on. It's very interesting. I think you'll be able to understand the need for what is going to be going on, especially in the wastewater. We almost maxed out in that last flood. I was talking to Eric Lemon, he sent out an email to the city people and so on. We were within about 10,000 gallons of hitting the max of flow in there. And then once we max it out, it starts going back upstream, which is, like I said, something you don't want to have happen. Oh, somebody left me cake, that's good. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yes, back to Mud Lanes.
Yeah.
You said it hasn't gone to the council yet?
No, it hasn't gone to council, it went to finance.
And what is the procedure with this all, the whole?
Okay, it comes
How does that?
to ED, Economic Development.
Which it did last Tuesday.
And then it comes to finance, and then from there, finance makes either says yay or nay, and then it goes to the city council for the full council to vote.
Planning too,
What?
planning.
Well, I think it's already been to planning,
I didn't think it was.
all right? I don't know why we would approve something that hadn't been through planning to find out if it's even possible to do. But you may be right, I'm not sure.
I thought Tom had said it goes to planning next, but that
Well,
was
then, if
last.
that's the case, if there's some modification, it's gonna have to come back to council again.
Oh,
Because when we vote on it, we're gonna vote on a set plan, this is it.
okay,
And if it goes to planning and they say, no, you can't do that, well, I'm gonna do this instead, it's gotta come back to council, and we have to approve the change and so on. So, but that may be the case, I'm not sure, but I know that it goes to ED, to finance, and then to the council.
okay.
And the council has the final say, and it gets debated again. Again, I'm gonna harp on, we need more moderate income housing, and Chris Schock is gonna say, well, we already do this and we do that. And he's true, I mean, like I said, I admit it, Chris is right. We did get involved in some nice, mid-level, mid-income housing. But there's more that needs to be done. There's a lot more people making 35 and under than there are making 75 and over.
There's a big elderly people.
Even people, old geezers like me that live on their social security and their investments and so on.
If you had it.
Dennis, are they trying to bring in young professionals? Is that why they're doing a high-end?
Pardon me?
Are they trying to bring in young professionals into the area? Is that why they're doing a high-end apartments? And I mean, was that their reason for doing this?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. They say they've had studies and there's a big demand for this high-end housing. I don't see it. I don't see it. I mean, to me, they're rolling the dice. They say they want to attract the millennials, and that's great. We need young people into our workforce and so on. But if you talk to the millennials, they're whining about they're paying off their college loans and they're living in their parents' basement. They're not getting married. They're not buying houses because they don't have two dimes to rub together. So if you don't have two dimes to rub together, you're probably not looking at paying $1,400 a month for an apartment. That's my reasoning, but I may be wrong. I mean, these people are smart. I don't think they're gonna invest $7-8 million in building this thing to let it sit empty. But, you know, the Titanic was supposed to be unsinkable too, and we saw what happened there.
Are they looking at starting this year yet? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of steps to go through before this even gets off the ground.
I'm having a hard time hearing in this room.
Sorry.
Say again?
Are they looking at starting this year yet? It sounds like there's a lot of steps to go through yet before this even gets, I mean, I know it's been approved, so far, but.
I would think they would be.
Well, like I said, it goes through ED and then to finance and then to the full council. And in the council, the developer presents a development agreement that lays out exactly what's going to be done, what the city has to do, what the contractor has to do, and so on. And that's really what gets approved, is the developer agreement, when you go to that. And like I said, if it goes to planning after that and there's a change, then the development agreement would have to be modified, which means the first one would be void, so we'd have to bring it back again and vote on the new one and so on. Like I said, it's nice. I mean, to us, it adds a lot to the tax base. I mean, this thing is going to have a value of probably about between $7.5 and $8 million, this development. And he's going to be paying the property tax on it, whether there's anybody sitting in it or not. That's his problem. We don't want to hear, well, there's nobody renting it. That's not our problem, and so on. Like if you don't pay your light bill, you call the utility company and say, I don't have the money. And they say, that's not our problem, You want your lights on, you better pay the bill. But I would, like I said, I would like to see more moderate income housing built, and I think there's plenty of demand for that. The only way people are ever going to be able to afford a house is to have good housing that they can save some money. They don't have to spend all their money on where they're living now. Save it. We want people to buy houses. That's the American dream, have your own house and so on. Although I've had my own house and I'm looking to get rid of it because it's too big for two of us to battle around in 2,300 square feet.
Well, when you get older, that's what you wanna do, and then when you
I'm trying to mow the lawn too.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just get tired of fixing and mowing and snow blowing and.
Oh, yeah,
all
I
this
hear
stuff.
you. I get tired of vacuuming. I have to vacuum. Even a high-powered alderman like myself, I have to clean the toilets and vacuum.
Good for her.
And in 53 years, I've never got a job change. I vacuum and clean the toilets. I don't know what it is. I'm getting pretty good at vacuuming and cleaning toilets, I'll tell you. I own my own company, I'm gonna specialize in vacuuming and cleaning toilets, because I've got some time and grade there.
That's why we need places for the seniors to be able to go to.
55.
Take
Yeah.
home a rental, rental
Oh,
places.
one other thing, we did, get some updates on the new fire station we're building on the west side of town, which is very needed. And we're also looking very hard, and I'm gonna press very hard, to take the old fire station and turn that into a senior center for the west side.
Oh, that would be nice.
And there'd be very little modifications we'd have to make to that, to make that a place where people can go and gather, have coffee, play cards or whatever they wanna do and so on. It's got enough space, got plenty of parking, it's in a residential neighborhood, so it's nice and quiet and so on. So that's one of the things that we look forward to doing, is taking that and making it a senior center for the west side. Okay, any other questions?
We had inquired whether it's only gonna be a two-story building for the new apartments, or is it gonna be taller than that?
Well, as it stands now, it looks like it's gonna be two-story with underground parking. I'm hoping it'll be two-story, because I'm sure there are people that live a little higher up the hill that like their view. And they don't wanna be looking into somebody's patio door. But as it stands now, it's only a two-story, which that thought slants down quite a bit, so they should be able to get away with that without impairing anybody's view that has the view now.
That's what we were asking, we had a nice view. It was a view.
Out in California, I've done a number, when I was in the window business, a number of photo shoots out in California. And when you're building on a hillside, what they do, when you buy the lot, they go in and put a post up. And you can't go any higher than that post, because that post is based on who's above you looking out over the ocean or so on, And because when I was on a photo shoot one time, I asked him, what are all those posts? He said, those are height limitations. I said, what? He said, yeah, you can't, the building they're putting, you can't go above that post. Otherwise, they're afraid that the guy's got a nice view, spent $3 million house, and next thing you know, he's looking at somebody's patio door. Now, it depends, if they've got some good-looking women or anything, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But if you've got a bunch of old grumpy guys like me, I don't want to look at that guy, for God's sakes. So, all right, any other questions I can answer? Any other good news I can share with you?
Oh, none so far.
All right, well, I don't know.
I was gonna ask, I had mentioned, I was at the economic development meeting, and I had said, why a medical clinic on the property too? Do they have a commitment for a tenant?
Well, I'm not sure they have a commitment for a tenant or not, and I'm not sure that it would always turn out to be a medical clinic. I don't know, I can see, and I'm glad you brought that up. That was something that it didn't bother me, it just concerned me, the fact that unless this is for senior citizens, which is priced way out of their price range, I could see it having a medical facility there. I don't know if they just figure they need a medical facility on, we've got all kinds of, if you look out to the hospital and all the things around there, it's not like we don't have any medical facilities on the west side.
Right.
So I don't know why they're doing that. I don't know if they have a commitment. Now, like I said, that's not really our problem. If they can't rent it, they'll have to rent it for something else. And if it's something besides outside the developer's agreement, they'll have to come in and get a modification if the city would give them one.
Well, it just happens, I brought up at the meeting too on Tuesday about the store had thought they were gonna have a Cousins or Subway in there when that got built. And here it is, isn't it, like 3 years later, it's still empty space, not being
Oh, you mean
used.
the gas station down there? Yeah, I noticed that too. I drove through there today because I wanted to get a picture of the laundromat that burned down. Boy, was that a mess. That roof is caved in, I mean, they're gonna have to level that building and start all over again. Yeah, I noticed that both of those are still empty. I heard too there was gonna be a Subway going in there, which would be nice for the people around that neck of the woods.
Right, but Sure had said that they had franchises in the Stevens Point area for both Cousins and Subway. And then when it actually came to be built, they said, no, they're too close to another one. So I don't know.
Well, there
if
is a
it's just-
Subway just a little bit out the road there, by Dave's Bowling Dome. There's a Subway at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Right, on Stewart Avenue.
Yeah.
Right, but, or is this just planned tax write-off, where you ask for it, and then you're using it as a empty space tax write-off?
Well, the taxes, they won't be able to write off their property taxes. They may be able to write off whatever the profit they make on the building on the income tax, but the the building itself would be taxed on the square footage of that building, whether it's empty or not. Because I would use the example, if your house is taxed at, let's say, let's say you pay $4,000 a year on your income tax. Let's say you move to another house, and then your house is empty. They're not gonna, reduce your taxes. Next year, you're still gonna get a bill for $4,000 whether you're living there or not. And I'm sure that works out the same for them. If they're taxed on the square footage of the building, and that's that.
But didn't they want to, some of the businesses ask for,
TIF.
where if it's not being used, they don't get charged
Oh,
for
you're
the
talking
tax.
dark store. That's usually your big boxes that do that,
Okay.
like your, Walgreens always beats us up on that. Walgreens does that all over the country. I think they must have about 50 lawyers that do nothing but go into municipalities and fight the tax code there.
Yeah,
But it's, like I said, they're gonna be taxed on the square footage of that building. And unless they, like I said, if they're losing money on that, they may be able to do that on their income and state taxes, but I don't think it's gonna impact their property taxes whatsoever.
yeah,
But I know that there is, the big boxes, Walgreens, Best Buy, Sam's Club, Walmart, they all try to use that ploy. In fact, right now, I think that down in Madison, they are considering changing it so they won't be able to get away with that anymore. If your building is there and you're charged, whether it's empty or not, it's still a building and it's still worth something, And then, if they're gonna say, well, I'm not generating any income, well, then maybe we should base your property taxes on, when you have a real good year, we should jerk them up because you made more money. And they would whine about that,
well, then sell the building, sell it.
And there's gonna be a lot of that going on as we move more into internet purchasing. There's gonna be a lot of places that are gonna be hurting.
Oh, yeah, it's a shame for some of these places because, well, I like to go, if I go clothes shopping, I wanna try it on. I don't wanna look at it on there, send for it, then have to go send it back. That's a more
Well,
hassle.
and that makes good sense. I like you too. And I think it's worse on women, and I'm not trying to be sexist, but you can go into a store and you can buy a size 8 here, it fits fine. You go down the road and you buy another size 8, it's tight or it hangs on you and so on. I don't know if God is just punishing women. Guys are pretty good. If I go in and buy a 36 waist, it's pretty much a 36 waist and so on.
Yeah, they're punishing.
But it is amazing how, and my wife often laments about that, And also, I like to feel something if I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
Although I have bought shoes online, I wear 10 and a half, send me the shoes and so on. But here's what happens though, when I'll use Best Buy as an example. People go out there looking for a computer. So they'll go out and they'll talk to the guy and they'll pick it up in the hand, he'll do a big spiel. And say, well, I'm gonna think about it. Then they go and order it on Amazon because they're comfortable with it now because they saw it. And see, that's what's killing the big box. It's called grazing.
Yeah.
We'll go out, they'll handle something, the guy will spend time selling them on it, and then they'll go order it on Amazon.
And I figured, well, I guess I look at it like, I'd rather buy it from them because I can take it back.
Yeah,
I don't have to send it back to some company to have it fixed.
yeah, but you'd be surprised, people ordering their groceries online now.
Oh, yeah.
Briggs has it online, I
Yeah.
think County Market has it online and so on. And it is a boon though. Let's say the weather's crappy. Excuse me. And I don't like to drive this kind of weather. You could call up Triggs, tell them what you want, they'll figure out you pay for a credit card, and they just bring it to you and so on. I know the manager over at Triggs, he said, look, we get a lot of guys, a lot of people that buy for their parents, their elderly parents, they'll all call up their order, they'll pay for it, credit card, said, send it to so-and-so, and then they just deliver it to them and so on. So that is a convenience. Yeah. It makes, I don't know how far out they go. I don't know if they deliver it to Athens or so on. I don't know how far they go
Yeah,
out.
I don't know either.
I think it's within our area.
There's probably Wausau, Schofield, Weston, and so on down there.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe like once every 2 weeks or something, maybe they go out to the outskirts on a certain day.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Omaha. They go to Irma on a certain day.
all right.
My girlfriend lives there.
All right, any other questions? Any other?
What happened happened with the finance? Did they ask for TIF money and was it approved at, finance?
You're gonna get TIP money, about $600,000 over 8 years. And, you know, this is kind of like a reverse, I explained to you a reverse TIP. Basically, all we're doing is giving their property taxes back, a portion of them, not all of them, but a portion of them. So they're actually paying themselves. They're taking it out of one pocket, and we're, instead of us taking it, we're just letting them put it in the other pocket. Somehow people think they're making out there, I don't understand. It's like daylight saving time. That's an example. You cut an inch off one end of the blanket and sew it on the other, and you think the blanket's longer. I just don't understand how that works, and so on. But that money, that TIF is, like I said, we're just giving them back, and, you know, that's, you know, I don't like it either, but sometimes that's what you have to do to make a project go forward. And it's in the TIF district. This TIF district has to actually be producing money, and so it's a wash. I had to think hard about that too, but I knew the project wasn't going to happen unless we did something.
Well, I just wanted to mention, Dennis, that Lisa made a big stand at the economic development about the same developer wanting to buy Sears with no plan.
Yeah, that was really dumb.
And she had said, there's no way I'm gonna vote on this with not knowing nothing. And it just seemed like, well, the developer didn't show. We have questions here which we don't have answered to. And so, but Lisa voted yes in finance to approve the mountain lanes.
Yep, well, it was unanimous. It was
Okay.
a unanimous vote. Now, that's the thing, you know, you brought up Sears. You know, there's two schools of thought on that. They want to buy the Sears building. We spent $650,000 on that building. So far, by having our tax rolls, we've lost another $150,000 in taxes. So we're in, what, that's $800,000 that we're in the hole for. This guy wanted to give us $700. Now, that doesn't cover what we've lost, but it comes pretty damn close. And I don't know why our fixation with what we have to know what's going in there. If I got a car for sale, and you come and buy it, I'm gonna say, well, what are you gonna do with it? You know, where are you gonna go with it? I'm not gonna say, once you buy the car, it's yours. You do what you want to with it. You know, they're gonna be controlled by zoning anyway. I mean, they're not gonna open up something that's totally illegal. They're not gonna be able to open up a casino there, because it's not legal. They'll have to use it for something. If they want to tear it down, that's fine, let them tear it down, it's their property. So I don't exactly understand the reasoning, but I think the guy set him up to fair, but not having any ideas what they were gonna do with it.
Right.
Yeah, and then they wanted some TIF money too.
Right.
And I think that was the killer. We said, wait a minute, we're not gonna give you money if we don't even know what you're gonna do. So if they just wanted to come and buy it, say, hey, we'll give you $700,000 for it, we don't know what we're gonna do with it, but we don't need any city money, we just wanna buy it. I would've said, where's the check? I'll sign it over right now. But the fact that they wanted TIF money, and I can see Lisa's point there, we're not gonna give you money unless we know what's gonna be going in there and so on. Plus, they wanted us to guarantee that if they tear them all down, we would have to resurface that one common wall that they share with them all, which would not have been a big expense, but, so we'll see. But maybe they'll come back and they'll tell us what they want. And if it's, you know, reasonable, and how much TIF money they want, maybe they'll just come back finally and say, we want to buy it outright, no city money at all. And I think at that point in time, we should sell it.
Okay.
No, I would.
Okay.
Anything else?
Anything else for Dennis?
Have I bored you enough now? You're
No, you have a board, I run out of questions.
Oh, okay. Oh, we'll let this officer get back out on the road and fight crime.
Have a good night, guys.
Yes.
Yeah, be careful out on the road.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, of course. See you next time.
Well, why don't you say it again for Dennis? You explain it.
So, since
Go ahead.
we're helping to pay for this,
What's that?
we're helping to pay for this, right, taxpayer money?
Yeah, there's tax money involved.
So are we getting like anything out of it, revenue?
Well, we get property taxes.
Are they gonna share it?
Yeah.
Well, you had said it's gonna be about $7.5 million, so they'll be taxed real
They'll be
estate
taxed.
on.
And they will get some of that back for their TIF money, and then we will get some. We don't let them slide all the way. We get some of it. And then once that 8 years is up, then they go full board. Then whatever it's taxed, whatever the property tax is, we get back. I do not have any updates for you on the river.
Okay.
I don't wanna pay for it.
The last communication I had from them is the new contractor is still putting his financing together, which is kind of disappointing. I thought that was a done deal. I thought we were ready to go. I mean, we are coming on, not that it looks like it, we are coming up on spring. And they're gonna want to start building here sooner or later.
Right.
Because we're missing tax money too. Even though we were gonna give them some money, we were gonna get some property taxes, and we're getting nothing right now.
Right, and
Because
Chris,
there's nothing built there.
and Chris gave an update at Economic Development last Tuesday about West Side Battery is still working on it and.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the dog ate my homework on that one. That's another one, I thought they were ready to rock and roll. They would have their money, they had their financing,
That's what I
and then,
thought.
that's been, what, almost 2 years now? But they are paying,
The property tax?
no, they're paying, they are paying the property taxes even though they don't own it. That's called payment in lieu of taxes, pilot. So they're paying on it even though they don't own it, they're still paying what they would be paying if they did own it, as far as property taxes go.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a.
I mean, I'd like to see something like that happen, it's gonna be, they've modified the plan, it's gonna be a brew pub and so on. I like my beer, and, it would be nice to have something there, except, I think you're setting them up for a problem, that's a one-way street. So, to get to it, you're gonna have to go down and come back around, and then when you leave, you're only going one way, you're going north, that's all the way it is. I just hope somebody doesn't have too many barley pops and start going south on that road.
Right. Well, and two, with the, I guess, the
They're gonna be
revision
sharing
in
up
the
First
railroad
Avenue.
tract and
Yeah.
where they moved that back, so
The
it's,
stop line.
it's further back from the railroad track, so I can see the traffic is gonna back up. But could you give us a brief update about what's gonna happen on First Avenue then?
Well, I don't sit in on those meetings, because that's Dave Nutting's district. I know they are putting in new, storm and sanitary sewer along First Avenue. They're gonna tear it up completely and reroute traffic.
But aren't they gonna make the lane from 2-lane to, a lane and a half because, the outer lane is falling down?
Well, I think what they're gonna do is I think they're gonna shove the road a little bit to the west.
Okay,
Have a lane over there and keep it away from, because the hill really drops off there. And I think when they start digging it up, because I think the sewer runs along that side of the road too, the sanitary sewer. So, like I said, that would be in a planning session. I don't sit in, I'm not on that committee. But I know that there will be a disruption of traffic along First Avenue. I don't know, I think that's gonna start in,
May?
May, I think first part of May. Because we were talking about rerouting the 3M trucks.
Yeah, I guess for timing, First Avenue and Thomas Street the same summer, seems a little overwhelming and.
Thomas Street to me is overwhelming. And Thomas Street is gonna happen, like it or not, and my big concern is, if it does happen, I wanna make sure we do it as safely as we possibly can. And people do live along that street. And, people have lived there a long time, and we are gonna be taking some of the houses, we take that bar that sits kinda on that's the weirdest corner. They're eventually gonna straighten that corner out.
Yeah, that Cheers bar.
Yeah, Cheers bar, they're taking that, and that's gonna straighten the road out. They think they can mitigate whatever pollution there, but there are gonna be some more tests done before it starts.
Good. Because it doesn't seem like they have, at least not that I'm aware of, a plan if they run into something contaminated, what do you do? And that there's only certain landfills that allow contaminated soil. Happens, I lived in Kenosha back in the 90s, so I know Waste Management has one in Kenosha County, but they may have to transport it quite a distance to find one.
Yeah, I know that they're talking about, if they're not going down very deep, to do this road, probably about that deep. And they're hoping they're not gonna hit the groundwater, the thing, any soil they disturb, they're gonna keep wet. They're gonna keep wetting it down while they're working with it and so on, and try to keep it moist and keep the dust down and so on. But, like I said, I'm not totally convinced. I think there's gonna be some more tests done. In fact, I know there's gonna be some more tests done. And there's gonna be more tests done in Riverside Park too. I'm concerned about that.
Good.
I've met with Tom Killian a number of times. In fact, we took a tour of that back in the wintertime, probably the coldest day we had of the whole year. I was out doing that.
Uh-huh.
And then we went over on Cleveland Avenue and toured the old, it used to be the old incubator. We toured that too. And we have some concerns about that also. I do at least.
Good. Any other questions for Dennis?
No, you keep asking them all.
Well, I try to think of some.
No, I like that because.
Well, but I want to make sure that your understanding may not be the same as my understanding, so I want to make sure you get
That,
the question you want.
right, that everything is understood all the way around.
And I'm giving you the information as I understand it, so, you know.
Okay.
Very expensive.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming, and have a good evening.
All right, I will. This is gonna be, what's this gonna be posted on, what, neighborhood or what are you gonna do?
It's gonna be on public access, and then I'm gonna put it out on Facebook, and then, on Nextdoor, once, Dave puts it together. But because I was expecting the developer to come, I thought this is a way for us to share it with the whole neighborhood. And I knew you were coming late, and I wanted you to have the opportunity to hear the whole thing.
It's a shame he didn't show up, he didn't call or anything? Is that-
No, not,
Yeah, what does that tell
I
you?
haven't been home since 3, but no, I received no call.
That's a shame if you were expecting him.
Yeah.
Well, I wish
And,
I would've dressed a little nicer, I look pretty tacky, but.
well, all right, well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. And next month, we're gonna talk about Reservoir Park, see what we can do.